Welcome to the by all means necessary world, the lovely voice of Maya. What? That was just too much. Cut it out. That was too nice of me, okay? Hey fuckers, welcome. It's Monday. It's rough, but we are here with a case that I have no idea how it took me this long to present you this case. Like, how was this not my first episode? Maybe because it's the strongest of the cases, it isn't solved, there's a lot of speculations about it, which again begs for a question. Begs for it, right? Just please. Begs for a question, because who am I if not a professional bullshitter who can invent her own story and her own conclusions to it? Without further ado, let's just dive straight in, because I love everything about this. I love researching it. Do you ever, okay, fellow podcasters, do you ever feel like when you research a case, like your guts are researching it? Your guts are like all jolly out there, be like, like your metabolism is a lot more faster that day just because you're researching something you love that much. Diving in, we are going back to 1926, when Agatha Christie disappeared for 11 days. Over the years, many speculations to her disappearance have been offered, but today only she knows the whodunit of the events over those 11 days. We'll take into consideration her discovery, disappearance itself, and her life to the date in 1926 to try and discover the whydunnit. This is the story of Agatha Christie's disappearance. Instead of a minisode for you Patreons, I'm just gonna publish the script notes. Just because, not because it's genius and I'm speculating all the way, because there's so many newspaper articles that I have included in this, and it's beautiful. Probably taken by other sources from newspapers.org that wants my freaking social media accounts for me to access it, and I'm like, I don't like giving data. Anyways. That's a personal story. So I'll be reading directly from some of the newspaper articles in 1926, which makes me insanely happy, as you can hear. Also, probably what made me study journalism. It seemed like a valid reason at the time. Now looking back at it, maybe it was a sign that was not probably the right degree, but hey. So, discovery. So 14th of December, at a hotel in Harrogate, Agatha Christie has been discovered under the name Teresa Neal. She was just like normally chatting with other guests. She never noticed the papers with her face on it. You know, nobody ever compared her to the missing face in the papers. And she was apparently found surrounded by detective novels as well. You know, the next sentence is complete copy-paste because it's so irrelevant. It just tells you nothing. Harrogate was at the height of elegance in the 1920s and filled fashionable young things. What does fashionable young things mean? So apparently for 10 days, Agatha didn't arouse any suspicions by anybody. So she joined in the balls, dances, and some palm court entertainment. So like basically it's kind of like a resort, and then she enjoyed every single event that they had. However, then one of the banjo players recognized her, so his name is Bob Tappin, who alerted the police. And the police then called her husband, Colonel Christie. By the way, everywhere where I've seen, Colonel is pronounced like Colonel or something, and I'm just like, I don't agree with that pronunciation, okay? I'm from a country where we pronounce words the way we see them. So, Archie Christie, her husband, traveled with the police to Yorkshire, and he just took a seat in the corner of the hotel's dining room, from where he just watched his estranged wife walk in, just take her place at another table, reading newspaper, which again just was showing her disappearance every single day, every single issue for those 10 days, and she was front page news. And once approached by her husband, witnesses just noted that she was puzzled, like she did not recognize her husband, to whom she was married for nearly 12 years. What I put in was badass bitch. You'll see why. But it's just because my whole theory clearly is that she has decided to disappear on her own, and that she's just pretending here, and I love it. I love imagining it. The title of the newspaper article that I have put after this is Mrs. Christie found at Harrogate. Dramatic reunion with husband in famous hydro. her memory gone? How missing novelists spend time while police and public looked for her? The next 3 articles that I have are to agree with the 3 most common theories about her disappearance, and then we're gonna go on the night of disappearance and those whole shenanigans of trying to look for her. Theory number 1 is that she planned this by herself as a publicity stunt. Now, there's an article that actually says, the title is "Demand for Her Books Jumps," and it kind of covers another theory, but it sort of twists it in the way that she did lose her memory. So it kind of says like what Mrs. Christie has suffered in loss of a memory has been her gain financially. At least 2 newspapers are publishing her novel in serial form, and book publishers have been rushing her old works to meet the demand caused by her sensational disappearance and equally sensational search for. Again, this is the only thing that we have about this. So as you can see, we don't have the stats, we don't have the numbers. I don't have much to be like, yep, this is the theory I want to believe in. Plus, I think it's kind of like, it could have happened without her knowledge as well. Like, even if you believe in any other theory, let's say, and she, disappeared, she is obviously going to be on the front page, so it's of course going to affect the sales of the books. Even if it wasn't intentional, it would have still resulted in that. Second theory is a memory loss caused by a car crash. So this is the most repeated one out there. And there have been obviously psychologists and people who have seen her and who have confirmed this also. So I looked at Agatha Christie or at her own website among like 100 other things. There's so much out there on this. It's all speculations. It's brilliant. On her own website, basically she never commented on this event but once, and she only discussed the incident publicly in an interview in 1928 where she gave the Daily Mail, out of all things, Agatha plays. So she told them she had been driving past a quarry on December 3rd, 1926, when she said, quote, "I left the wheel and let the car run. The car struck something with a jerk and pulled up suddenly. I was flung against the steering wheel and my head hit something. Up to this moment, I was Mrs. Christie," end quote. So it again supports that thing where it's like, yep, she definitely had a loss of memory, and the way she describes it is like she was Mrs. Christie and then she was a completely different person. What psychologists said, that this was a psychogenic trance and out-of-body state due to stress. So they say it's a state of fugue. I've seen that all around the material that I've researched. So it's kind of like, temporary memory loss. Which again, let me direct this question to the psychologists and psychiatrists of the day. Does that exist? Did it ever exist, like a state of fugue and sort of temporary memory loss? And how does that work? As in, how do you snap out of it? How do you just then continue on writing other detective novels and basically just continue on writing in the exact same style? And how do you suddenly know you are Mrs. Christie again? These are all the parts of that confusion where I'm like, this does not really work as the theory for me, even though it has probably the most writing and the most sources on it. But yeah, let me know. And third theory, and my theory, is that she did plan to get away, but for a different reason, where we are going to go into the motive and into whys, and it's going to have quite a few of comparisons between her writing and this disappearance. As you noticed, she has said her name was Teresa Neal. Neal is the last name of her husband's mistress. Neal's dad commented for the newspaper. He said, "I cannot hazard any theory why Mrs. Christie should have used my family's name. My daughter Nancy is naturally upset about it, and so are we all. There is not the slightest reason for associating Nancy with the disappearance of Mrs. Christie." My theory is that Agatha just picked up her shit and left, and I will support this with further things. But she just wanted, like a badass bitch, to do some damage to this family. Be like, okay, husband is cheating on me. Great. He is making a fool out of me. I'm the famous one here. Hello, who are you? You just served in a war. But also, I can do some damage to him for 10 days in the news, and I can also do it to his mistress. Because guess what? If I suddenly show up saying my last name is Neal, people are going to suspect, like, was she the one behind it? Or like, why is a famous writer using her husband's mistress' last name? I think it's a very much fuck you kind of theory. I like to call it that, and I stick to it. Because both of them look like mugs, okay? As they say in the UK, yeah. They look like mugs in front of the whole public once the media takes the wheel again. My next line is, "And that, ladies and gents, is how you serve your husband." I just get carried away too much when I write the script. And then to finalize this chapter, so she was fun, all great. Basically, they finally divorced and both remarried within 2 years. And, you know, lived there happily ever after. Fuck this. And yeah, she just never mentioned this again, except from that one time. Not even in her autobiography. Nothing much like mentioned on her website. It's just the speculation again. No comment from her. So let's just deepen my theory and others and go into her actual disappearance. I'm opening this disappearance thing with a screenshot of her works published until then, just because I think it's important to know like where she was in terms of her writing career. So in 1920 she publishes The Mysterious Affair at Styles. Then she publishes a bunch of other books, some short stories. In the summer of 1926 she publishes The Murder of Roger Ackroyd, which is one of her best works, by the way. Go read it right now. Stop this podcast. Just kidding. Don't ever listen to me. What are you doing? So she was just about making it. She kind of had that thing like with J.K. Rowling as well, where she got different publishers. Rarely like one of them would start publishing her, but then still she didn't have the fame that she does today or that she did with her later works. But in the early 20s life seemed to be going okay, right? So she had a daughter named Rosalind. The family moved into a mansion that they named Styles after her first book. She was continuing her writing career and Archie was an investment banker. Boring as fuck, but fuck it, fuck Archie. Then there's a couple of triggers that start happening. So her dad actually died when she was when she was young. But this is when her mom passes away. So after she passes away, her and her daughter go to the mother's estate for a while, when her husband just appears for her daughter's birthday. It's like, okay, cool, great stuff. And he asks her for a divorce. Read the room, Archibald. His actual name is Archibald, I'm not inventing this. Read the room. It's, first of all, it's your daughter's birthday. Second of all, your wife's mom died. Can we just like, not a good day. Not a good day. But okay, if you think this is like, okay, it's bad enough you're asking your like wife for divorce on this day, but he says that he is asking her for divorce because he has been seeing a woman he worked with named Nancy Neal. Because this is what you gotta do once you cheat. You gotta share everything. First name, last name, nicknames. Do they have a baptized name? Date of birth, address. Facilitate the woman. Facilitate her to find her and to fuck your life over this. If every cheater did this today, our lives would be so easy. You'd just like, the cheated party would just be out there. Pulling a freaking Beyonce from Lemonade, just breaking your cars, man. You know, shitting in your garage passageway. What? That sounds like a personal story? Definitely not, okay? I save my shit for special purposes. What? Just kidding. I never dated anybody rich enough to have a garage. It's enough, just be like, yep, sorry, I want a divorce. You don't need to specify, go into every single detail, give the names, like, stop it. Not on this day at least, be like, yeah, I'll elaborate on it later. I mean, it is said by other witnesses that Agatha actually wanted the marriage to work, so she followed him back home. She's like, yep, let's work on this. And she did this in an attempt to convince him to give the marriage another chance. Instead, Archie continues seeing his mistress and going out to weekend parties. 1920s weekend parties. Whoa, they finish at like 7 p.m. It's great. And then they go home and talk to his fucking wife how he has his mistress. Sad life, okay. On December 3rd, 1926, he went to one such weekend house party. Oh, this is even sadder. House parties in 1920s. What booze was there even? But there wasn't Guinness. Commentary on this. So he left the wife and daughter home. And it's also speculated that they had argument this night as well. And he's like, nah, fuck this, can't deal with this. I'm gonna go out, party hard, yeah? Don't let your issues unresolved, okay? If my great granny told me anything, that's that. So after he leaves, Agatha writes 3 notes. One to her secretary to cancel all of her weekend plans. Another one to Archie. And the third one to her brother-in-law. Pay attention to this, because those notes might come into importance later, okay? Again, a lot of speculations, but they're important. After she writes these notes, she takes a small traveling case and drives off. and her car would only be found the next morning, crashed above a quarry, with her driver's license and clothes being left behind. So again, what's speculated is that after that they had the argument, how many letters of those she has written, and that she has gone to the room to kiss her daughter goodbye. This is how I imagine it, yeah? Her husband, it's like probably like 7 p.m, yeah? 7:30, he's coming back from this weekend party, wild, stayed up so late. He's coming in, he's like, oh, where the fuck is my wife? Why is she not just there cooking for me? And, you know, being faithful little wife while I'm cheating and going around publicly like a mug. So the next morning he's like, it's okay, she's probably around, I'm not even gonna look around the house, yeah? And so the next morning the police is called and they go to the Styles mansion and talk to her secretary and daughter, and neither of them knew where Agatha left. And the next sentence says they drug the pond, so like after initial searches for Agatha, there's no clues show up. And then there was a typo in this Medium article that I was reading. It says they drug the pond near where she crashed, then they drug it again after nothing was found. The way I imagine this is that like police is just putting some drugs into the pond as a method of finding the bodies. It's just like, yep, they're just gonna come out. The outline is just gonna show where the body is, and then the divers can just go there. Imagine if the science actually came up with this, you know? It's like, oh, how is 2020 gonna look like? Yep, we're gonna have a drug that we put in a pond and it outlines all of the corpses in there. Nope, coronavirus. That's what fucking happened in 2020. So now witnesses start coming forward, saying that they've seen Agatha after she left the Styles mansion. So one of them said that they were on their way to work on December the 4th and just passed a woman sitting next to her car on the road, and she seemed upset. He noticed she was only wearing a thin dress, even though it was quite cold outside. So he said he had helped her start the car, and then she drove off in the opposite direction of where she would crash just a short while later. And then there is other witnesses that apparently said that she has been seen getting onto a train and that she seemed disorientated. So the main theory is that she dropped off the car and then took the train to Harrogate. From then on, she was staying at this spa/hotel. One thing that I haven't found in many places, I think I've only seen it in one, is that she left like the driving license, the code, so that's all there. But one article says that there was also a bottle labeled poison, lead and opium abandoned on the back seat. So again, trying to speculate, did she kill herself? Did she jump off the bridge? Did she poison herself and then just walk on to freeze to death? Out of everything, in my professional opinion, this is the part that didn't need any speculation. Because if you were to have poison in your possession, right, you wouldn't name the bottle poison. Like Mr. Obvious much. Why would you name your bottle poison and opioids? Like at best, like you would name it what it actually was, like, hey, some codeine, you know, or just like codes on the sly, like give it a slang, give it something. Plus it's Agatha, like she wouldn't have just named it poison. Boring as fuck. She's an author, guys. A lot of speculations, which weren't helped by who they involved to try to investigate this. So, the next line says the Home Secretary, William Winston Hicks, you know, the Home Secretary in the UK at the time, you know him, everybody knows him. Didn't even Google how he looks like to make any fucking reasonable comment. Urged the police to make faster progress in finding her. God, I love the politicians that urge somebody, but they don't actually do shit. But they involved other two crime writers because, of course, who is gonna know what is going on in her head if not other crime writers that write about completely different stories. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was involved. You will know enough about Doyle if you just read Sherlock Holmes, because you just know that this guy is gonna have the same prepotentious thing just because how he displayed Sherlock. It was hoped that his specialist knowledge is going to help find a missing writer. I truly love the next paragraph. Arthur Conan Doyle, a keen oculist, try using paranormal powers to solve the mystery. What he does is he takes one of her gloves. Again, why always gloves? Why gloves in the OJ case? Why gloves here? Listen, we know the glove always fits. We've seen OJ. OJ was guilty, by the way, yeah? And now he's offering professional opinion/advice on Twitter. If he thinks Carol Baskin did it, I mean, he's a professional. Yeah, Also, if you think that Carol Baskin killed her husband, you agree with something with O.J. Simpson. Okay, let that just sink in for a second. Also, who gave this guy gloves? Don't let him into the house. So he took the glove to a celebrated medium in the hope that this would provide answers. So it's basically like one of those juju magic things where it's like, yeah, you tell me, where is the owner of this glove? As if. So that yields no fucking results. So the police is back to square one. They're like, oh, you didn't really help, did you, mate? Go back. Write about the guy that can actually solve mysteries. Yeah, okay, stop pretending that you can go and fit that part. Another thing that fed the speculations was that close to the scene of the car accident was a natural spring known as the Silent Pool, where it was said that 2 young children have died. So obviously journalists take the wheel and they're like, yep, she must have drowned herself there. Because again, people have seen her, like they have said that she looked upset, she was clearly not in her right mind. She was outside with a thin dress in this cold, la-di-da-di-da, okay? All a bit of speculating, but they fucking dug the pond and it turned out nothing. So now, after 3 days of searching for her, there's an article that pops into the newspapers, and apparently the police kind of calls off the searches because it was said that Christie's brother-in-law received a letter from her saying she was going to a Yorkshire spa for rest and treatment. The article is titled "Message Ends Hunt for Mrs. Christie." Writer explains disappearance in England by saying she went to health resort. So the paragraph in this newspaper article says, quote, "The county authorities late tonight decided to discontinue the search. It was announced that the missing woman had been heard from. The brother of Colonel Archibald Christie, who lives in London," it was explained, this is so written 1920s style, it was explained, had received a letter written since her disappearance in which the novelist said that she had been in ill health and was going to a Yorkshire spa for rest and treatment. Now, why write to your brother-in-law? Again, if you're not trying to make your husband kind of look shady and look like a mug. Also, the brother-in-law destroyed this letter. So the police just went in and was like, oh, hey, we heard, you had a letter. And it was like, it was destroyed. Oh, sorry, just before you came by, I just burnt it into the fireplace. No reason at all. What happened to the other 2 letters, you might wonder? Well, apparently the one to her secretary, she was just really ambiguous, but she said like she must get away. And there was another thing, another story that sort of supported this like urge to get away, which came from this article saying that it quoted one of her friends, where she apparently said that the house they lived at Sunningdale was getting on her nerves. Said that apparently Christie said the house had a reputation of being haunted, and then she said to this friend, if I do not leave Sunningdale soon, Sunningdale will be the end of me. So again, at least that letter exists and we sort of have something supporting it. The third letter, which was to her husband and Colonel Christie, well, he apparently refused to reveal its content. So there was nothing saying like, oh, he destroyed it again, he burnt it in a fucking fireplace or something. No, so like, sorry, what say you, husband of Agatha? Like, the police just comes in and he's like, oh, I refuse to reveal its content. Sorry, what? Like, in this whole case, I was just so frustrated how they treated her husband. I know that he's like a respectable figure, okay, I get all of that, but still, come on, like the husband is always the first suspect. Like, it doesn't seem from anything that I read that they like truly grilled him, that they've taken him like properly into consideration. They just clear him like, oh yeah, he's a cheater, he was just outside partying while his husband disappeared, so yeah, he doesn't have anything to do with it. But then like, how do you not like sort of grill him more to reveal this letter? So in this newspaper article that was published on December the 10th, so this is literally just about like a few days before they found her, so it mentions the letters, and then the justification is Colonel Christie refused to reveal its contents, stating it was a personal note written evidently before his wife decided to get away. So that doesn't make your case any stronger. If it's a personal note, like what? Listen, we all know it's not like she was suddenly like writing him some fucking erotic story, okay? We all know it is not like something sexual that you can't expose to the fucking police. So she was pissed off at you. This is probably some angry ass note. Why didn't nobody grill him about this? So as you could see, because most of my sources are literally newspaper articles, media took the wheel pretty quickly. One of my favorite things though is this article, which just has Mrs. Christie disguised, and then like just has 3 pictures of her, of how she would have disguised herself differently. One of them is just like with some fake wig and glasses. I mean, because there were some articles circulated that she was actually like dressed as a man, and this is how she was disguising herself. But I just love whoever like sketched these is my hero. Just the hero of the week. Just because they changed her whole features, like all of them are shadowed. It's like, you know, when somebody takes a selfie of you and half of it is in the sun and half of it is in the shade, that's how all of them look like. So it's just like the features don't even resemble her. I love it so much. Now we have the media coverage and the most details about this story. Let's go into her background up until that date to see like what might have triggered this disappearance. Something that nobody takes into consideration is that Agatha was born as the youngest child, youngest out of 3, to a family that was quite well off. So like her parents were busy socialites. Her dad is actually described, I think this is Wikipedia, a gentleman of substance. Oh, what the fuck does that mean? Does it mean that he was no nonsense man? One of my other favorite expressions. I mean, to kind of explain to you this, like she has actually even been homeschooled, which is a huge trigger. If you're me, I just don't condone homeschooling in any way, shape or form or reason, okay? I even had like very, very intense conversations at work where I would just be like, no, tell me why. Please explain yourself. Why are you homeschooling your child, okay? Everybody, parents, during this coronavirus time, you understand, right? You wouldn't fucking homeschool your child, you would go crazy, right? You're going crazy right now, aren't you? So why the fuck would you do it? I think like this kind of plays into the psychology of it. Clearly, again, not a psychologist, but hey, as I mentioned before, like there were quite a few triggers just before her disappearance. One of them happened when she was 11 years old, when her dad died, which she said that it marked the end of her childhood. You had Agatha, who was before that like quite carefree. She was said to have had imaginary friends, you know, she was like quite like a typical child, like innocently playing on the streets, etc. And then it's kind of like her childhood ended abruptly at the age of 11. So she was writing for her from her young days, and she married Archie, who was the pilot for the army at the time in 1912. The 2 of them both worked for the army during the war, so she volunteered as a nurse, and this is where her knowledge of poisons comes to play. And also during the Second World War she worked as a pharmacy assistant at University College Hospital in London. It says updating her knowledge of toxins while contributing to the war effort. Oh, so poetically written, so nice. So her war service ends when Archie was reassigned to London and they rent a flat in St. John's Wood. St. John's Wood even today doesn't have much going on. It's just like a nice little area in West London, just for non-UK listeners, which is pretty much everybody except my friends here. Well, hi US! Shout out to the US! And just to put things into perspective, it's still one of the most expensive areas to live in London. It's just kind of like because of the proximity to Soho, Marble Arch and all of that. But yeah, it's quite a plain area if you really think about it. It's just like, oh, because we are here, you know, we can rent you a cupboard for like $1,000. £1,000 a month. Moving on. And then, as I mentioned, so she gets some taste of fame. She publishes like a couple of books, but it was the final trigger when her mother died in April 1926, because they have been exceptionally close. They actually went on a trip just before her death as well, so she died of arthritis. It is said that that loss sent Christie into depression. So this is again for those who sort of more believe into the loss of memory theory, because you might believe that it caused her to go into a breakdown. For me, these triggers are definitely relevant, but again more in a way where it's like, okay, I couldn't control the fact that my parents died, I couldn't control these triggers this year, but hello husband, like you didn't want to work on your marriage, just wanted to continue your affair, didn't have any consideration for me, so what I'm gonna do is make you think about that for about 10-11 days. And one final trigger was in August 1926, where Archie asked Christie for divorce. He has said he had fallen in love with Nancy Neal, and this has finally later that year culminated with her disappearance. Now, before we go to motive, obviously with this story, it was a perfect opportunity to have 2 little small mini sections. mini interludes with one will be her quotes and then the other one is going to be what have we learned from the life of Agatha Christie. Okay, I just love her quotes. Quote number 1. Very few of us are what we seem. Tell more, Agatha, tell more. Quote 2. One of the luckiest things that can happen to you in life is, I think, to have a happy childhood. Yes, Agatha, yes, girl, this is why I cover a lot of people who don't have unhappy childhood. This is why there's a whole niche of podcasts on it. You got it, you got it. Quote 3. Every murderer is probably somebody's old friend. And this, Agatha, is why this podcast has started. Because why do people kill? They're all somebody's friend. We all are mocking somebody else's friend because they're just senselessly killing. And the fourth quote, which I think kind of is self-explanatory when it comes to her disappearance as well. Crime is terribly revealing. Try and vary your methods as you will, your tastes, your habits, your attitude of mind, and your soul is revealed by your actions. Again, what were you telling us, Agatha, all of this time? You were revealing something with your actions, weren't you? And I cracked it, haven't I? The morals of this story, or what have we learned, or what should we take away section. Number 1, never give up. I put, this is where I took this chapter, this paragraph that I haven't even mentioned. She was initially an unsuccessful writer, with 6 consecutive rejections, but this changed when The Mysterious Affair at Styles was published in 1920, featuring Hercule Poirot. Yeah, just like Harry Potter. Never give up until you get it published, until you get there, okay? Never. By the way, in my research, before starting this podcast, in my rabbit hole of hey, what equipment should you use? Where should you publish? So I went into this Reddit thread. I don't even like Reddit. I don't even read Reddit. I don't get it. Anyways. There's this Reddit thread which said most podcasts don't even go beyond episode 16. So hey, look at us. Look at us succeeding yet. They haven't cancelled us yet. How successful. I don't know why that number, but hey, if anybody's listening, by the way, and they're planning to start a podcast or start any project really, famous or not, okay, whoever you are, what you need to ask yourself is if a year down the line, however many years down the line, you still are not profiting from it, there's no money, would you still do something? Would you still do it for free? Because if not, maybe yeah, you're famous and you know you're gonna profit out of it straight away. But maybe it's not a project you're most passionate about. She gets to the episode 16 and feels entitled to give advice, Second moral of the story, never settle for a cheater. Find someone you can use. What? I get so carried away. Okay, I'll explain. Following her second marriage in 1930 to an archaeologist, she used her first-hand knowledge of her husband's profession in her fiction. She did with the Second World War and the poisons, and when she was a nurse, because she followed Archie around as well. Basically, okay, you just never settle for a cheater, okay? Ignore the other part. Don't tell them my advice you to find somebody you can use. For fuck's sake. And the third one is surround yourself with powerful women. Women power, yeah. So she described her childhood as very happy. She was surrounded by a series of strong and independent women from an early age. So she primarily lived in Devon with her parents, but then would also visit the homes of her step-grandmother and great-aunt Margaret Miller in Ealing. And she was also inspired by her maternal grandmother that was in Bayswater. So this is her connection to London and to all these powerful women. And this is why Miss Maple came around, which again is just one of the detectives that nobody cares about. Everybody cares about Poirot. Guys, I don't know, some quality fiction, okay? Now, let's break down the theories and the motives behind them. I put these theories in the order from the least plausible to the most plausible for me, okay? You guys, you know where to find me to let me know your opinions. Let's discuss this. In the last place I put the amnesia, just because it was again chewed up and spit out, and there's nothing truly for me supporting it except from some people who have examined her after being oh yeah, she lost her memory. Based on what again? Based on her giving the last name of the husband's mistress. For me, that's actually going against it, because first of all, where is the first name from? Why choose that first name? Also, why out of all of the random last names you choose the last name of the mistress? So sorry, how much of a coincidence is that? It's exactly because of that. It's like her husband was open about her name and last name, and then she uses that exact last name when found at a hotel. So for me, that actually goes really very much against this theory. But also, it's all of like that proceeds and goes after it. So like, how short of an amnesia period that was, because she just continued writing straight after that and published like her next book, I think, in like about a year. I think it was 1928. But again, it follows the same style of writing. So what, like, you're telling me she was rereading her books to understand again how she was writing? I don't buy it. Also, then at what exact time did she lose the memory? Was it when she hit the steering wheel? Because then why take the train to the known location where you and your husband used to stay at this spa before? Or are you saying that she lost the memory once she was already there? I just really don't buy into this theory. Tell me what, like, if you're convinced this is it, what convinced you into it? Oh, and also, what goes to this is that we have no details of this car accident, except from her saying that she hit the steering wheel. I bet that we would have had pictures of a destroyed car, so if something was just pulled in a ditch, that doesn't necessarily mean an accident. Like, what car was hit? There's no further, like, investigation into this. Me to be like, okay, she had an accident, she had a concussion. In second place, I have the publicity stunt. I find this more plausible not because of that one article, but because just I think it's common sense for somebody to know, like, if they were to disappear willingly, that this, and if they're even remotely famous, this is going to be front page news. People are going to be on it, and then obviously somebody, you know, today you would Google that person and be like, who is this? Oh my god, look at this, she has books. Let me see what she writes about. Can I solve this myself? Can I go into this myself? And back then, it was obviously like, oh, let me actually go and buy this book to see all of this. And this is partially also like the fuck you thing, because it's like, oh, look at this, like, you rejected me 6 times before, like, my book got published, and now I am still seeking fame, which I deserve, but am not being given. So I'm just gonna skedaddle for a minute and then let you guys, let the media do the let the media just do me some justice. And now in the number 1 place, the fuck you theory, the out of spite theory, the jealousy theory, whichever you want to say that motivated this. But yeah, I think it's kind of a mix of all of these. And let me tell you why I think this was motivated by it. So one of it is Mistress's last name. Again, why use it? Why use that last name? Another one is actually how she moved on from it. Like, how nonchalantly she just never mentioned it ever. Like, why not? If it was actually amnesia, if it's something that people can reason with, can really understand, why not actually speak about it and explain it in further detail? I know you don't have to, that's the thing. Like, you can be a badass bitch and never mention it and let other people speculate and, you know, make fucking podcasts about it. But that for me kind of aligns with either that she was doing it for publicity reasons, or that she was doing it for the my husband's gonna look a bit like a mug reasons. Then again, everybody was like, oh, she wouldn't have left her daughter behind. Well, I don't think she was exactly, if this was the theory, if this was what actually happened, like, she knew she wasn't leaving her daughter behind. First of all, like, she was in care of the maids, of the husband, of other people that lived at the premises of the mansion. And it's exactly that, like, because she gave no explanation. So I think, like, in her mind, this was just a temporary thing until, well, the media resources rise, until somebody recognizes her. So, like, she knew this was going to be a short while, because somebody is eventually going to recognize her face. So she knew she wasn't just leaving her daughter, like, in some sort of agony. Then we have the letters, because what kind of defies for me the other 2 theories is those letters, or rather how people reacted to them, or how they wouldn't actually say what those letters state, which would have kind of like either accepted or denied the other theories for me. For me, it kind of says like, hey, I wrote a letter to brother-in-law and I wrote it to my husband, and none of them is going to actually reveal what's in them, so that's going to make those 2 characters look really shady. Which again is just going to enhance that whole thing of like, was it the mistress? Was it the husband's mistress that had anything to do with it? Or was it her husband as well? And what I think a lot of people that speculate on this ignore is her actual fiction and like parallels or lack thereof when it comes to her disappearance. So her mysteries are always solved, right? The detective usually gets together the community to sort of like arouse suspicions, gets other people against each other, if you know about like her fiction, about what Poirot usually does in the books. And the person responsible is usually the most obvious one that you kind of lose track of during the reading experience, just because it's like, this is too obvious, but it is usually that person that's behind it. You know, read between the lines, Agatha here. In all of her books, once the truth is revealed, then order is restored, chaos packs away, everything, you know, lives there happily ever after. So I think that's why she was so keen on that amnesia theory to last, because it provided a great explanation to the family and to whoever wondered. And then she was actually like, yeah, totally, definitely happened. While she had her, fuck you, bye guys, bye, I'll see you later kind of experience. But also from her books, like, you usually always focus on what you can't solve, which is where the media jumped in and went into her favor. So the car, what happened to it, why, if it has been in the accident, why is there no car crash scenes, what was found in the car, where did she go afterwards, when did this actually happen, when did she leave the car, how did she get to her spa/resort in the first place, because there are multiple accounts again of this. Why was she all happy? That's one thing that goes into my theory. Why was she all happy dancing, ignoring the fact that it's definitely her freaking face that she sees on the newspaper things? Even if you are suddenly having amnesia, you would probably go to the reception desk and be like, oh, sorry, doesn't this person look like myself to you? Like, that's one odd comparison. Oh, I have a doppelganger. Yeah, probably would. But she was all happy, like, dancing and ignoring the fact that anything has happened to her. So again, if you are a person with an amnesia, suddenly finding yourself in a random nice ass hotel that you apparently can pay for, again, how do you like connect those dots? Especially like, I guess if you're amnesia, like if you have amnesia, like you don't know you're a mystery writer, but you find yourself somewhere, you're like, oh, I'm here by myself for 10 days, or however long, however many days she was there, but probably between like 8 and 10 at least. I'm here, I don't have a family here, I'm by myself. Can anybody explain that? I don't think that people, I mean, again, let me know if I'm wrong, but like if you get amnesia, do you lose parts of your personality that are naturally like inquisitive, all about this mystery and finding out, like solving things? Because that to me is like super suspicious, the fact that like, no, she was just acting like, yep, she's just there, happy-go-lucky on holiday, while apparently having like lost her mind. And another thing that all of her books focus on is there's always a motive. So even before whodunnit, we discover the whydunnit, and then like everything is clear and resolved. Something that might support the publicity theory is that this motive is usually money. So usually the killers in her books don't enjoy murder just for its own sake. It is usually some monetary profit that they are looking for. So for me, what definitely prevailed in this theory is, if we are comparing it to her writing style, that there must have been a motive, there must have been something that motivated her to snap that night, leave those 3 letters, and get out in the car. I mean, because if not, at some of those points, you're going to realize, hey, I'm leaving like my daughter, husband behind, let's get my shit together, let's go back to it. Why did I just write all these 3 letters? Like, it's a long process, right? Especially in 1920s, and how long would it take you to write 1 letter, second, third, go into your slow ass car, drive anywhere, then like, if she actually, what was witnessed, like she took the train and then had like whole 10 days at the location. So I think for all of that to happen, there had to be a motive. And for me, spite prevails over publicity and over her book sale. And it is that parallel as well, that she needs to have a motive in those stories, and then the whodunit is literally left as the last reveal. It is usually, for the whole duration of the book, it is up to the readers to speculate on it. So here it is just still left up in the air as the ultimate fuck you by Agatha Christie. I love you so much, Agatha. I hope you are in heaven and living your best life. Because I had respect for your literature, and now I have so much more respect just because of this disappearance. So that's the case. Let me know which, well, conspiracy theory you agree with. What convinced you to sort of agree with it? Do you agree with me? Because this is kind of like an invented one. Nobody really was like, oh yeah, she was a jealous girl who is doing stuff out of spite. Except for me. who lived quite intense high school experience. Maybe that's why, you know. But like, I really see some parallels between her fiction and her disappearance, and really think this is it, guys. I think I cracked it. The sources for this podcast have been History Extra, what you might have missed in history class podcast, What the French Toast, which is this great YouTube channel. There's a lot of YouTube content obviously out there as well, which I'm kind of going down the rabbit hole during this quarantine. But yeah, this is just like, newspaper articles, speculations. So obviously I watched it and I was looking for the one with the most ridiculous channel name. So hey, What the French Toast won. It's actually great, watch it. Historic UK article, Wikipedia, Crimereads, great article on Crimereads, Agatha Christie's own website, this Medium article called Agatha Christie Real Life Mysterious Disappearance, and New York Times, which kind of gives you a perfect timeline. Like, I love how this story made to New York Times straight away as well. It says Agatha Christie vanished 11 days. It kind of gives you like a great timeline of the events. So it's like actually date by date, what was published, what was happening, like date by date. So that you can kind of like break it down easily for your own convenience. What am I saying? Okay, I'm gonna post the script notes on Patreon so you can see all of the beautiful newspaper articles as well. I suddenly said it like as if I'm going into a burp, which I probably am, okay? Do you want the burps recorded? Oh, of course you don't. I hope you love that case. You know where to find me to comment on it. whydunnit, Twitter, podbamn@gmail.com. Gmail, inbox, data, stolen. I don't steal data, okay? It's been enough for one day. It's been enough. Moving on. Next section. Let's go. Okay, inventing another rapid fire round for this week, yeah? One true crime recommendation. One not true crime Okay, great. This is going great so far. One non-true crime recommendation. And as a last thing, a random question that I'm gonna answer, yeah? Let's do this. So, true crime recommendations for this week. I don't know how it has taken me 2 fucking years, because this is how long these girls have been producing this podcast. But listen to Sinisterhood. It's epic. It's like these 2 comedians from Dallas, so like it is really funny. It's again true crime comedy, okay? So don't just expect people to tell a story in a boring ass way. But yeah, it's epic, and their artwork, like their podcast artwork, is just so great. I was just like, this is the life. This is it. And I hope like somebody else listens to them in the UK, as in a lot of people, so that they can come here to do a live show, because that would be the dream, okay? So it's like all sorts of cases. It's not just murder. It's not just murder. It is like disappearances, random haunted stuff, you know. They have it all. Listen to them. Non-true crime. Okay, this is random, but as I get a lot of newsletters, let me start suggesting some, recommending some. So there's this one that I get. It's called Postcard of the Day. It's by Condé Nast, or however you pronounce that company's name. So I think if you go onto their website and just type in Postcard of the Day, that it should come up. And yeah, it's just that thing where I'm like, yep, every day in the inbox I get postcard of a place, and it comes like with a little article. So if it is like a beach in Spain, it will be like where it is, you know, like a proper article from Condé Nast website. Also, on that note, if you are a Reddit person and you know you do the r/, you know what that's all about, I don't, and type in earth porn, yep, you have like daily images of the places around the world. So, you know, just if you have the nostalgia of actually getting the fuck out of your location, yeah, that's your thing for the week. Now, on to the random question. Let's do this weird thing.
Hello.
Husband, ask me a question. Just a random question. It's for the podcast.
What episode of the podcast are you on?
Seriously, as if they can't see that. They can see that.
When did we get married?
When did we get married? Yeah, that's the question you want answered.
Oh, for fuck's sake. What would you do if you were a millionaire?
Okay, cool. I'll sit on that one. Okay.
Okay.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, first thing that I would do if I were a millionaire, I would play that fucking song by Bruno Mars. Even though it's a billionaire, isn't it? I don't know what the song says. Anyway, so that's the first thing I do. And then I'd actually hire some people to make this podcast a freaking business, so that I never work for the office again and never work for the man. Even though, you know, in a lot of senses I would always be working for the man. Let me not go into that. Okay. Also, just so it doesn't look like I'm bailing out of the question, I'm married for almost 3.5 years, yeah? I'm not gonna share the anniversary date, like, it's not necessary. But it's a long ass time. What would you do if you were a millionaire? And what random questions would you like me to answer? That's it for this episode. Agatha Christie conspiracy theories? Send them to me. Your husband's questions to me? Send them to me. Just kidding, don't. I'm not striking a fight between people in quarantine. Fuck that. Your random questions to me? Send them. My way. You know where to find me. And now, you are going into your next Zoom call. What are you doing? What are you doing in there? Are you setting up the weird ass background behind you just because you can? Just because Zoom has that option and your company paid extra for that dumb thing? Are you chatting about what you're doing this quarantine like anybody cares? Like it's exciting? Or are you sharing motives behind famous crimes and conspiracies that only you believe in, but you can convince somebody else to believe in? You go in there and be a goddamn conspiracy theorist. That's right. That's how you use that expression. Go into that Zoom call and convince them, by all means necessary. Fuck it. And by doing that, you are making this world a better place, one motive at a time. I always believed in you. I always said it. Always believed in you. Okay? That's it. That's it. Maya, signing the fuck out. Keep being the badass bitch like Agatha was in 1920s, okay? Always have that back of your head this week. That's it. That's it. Bye, fuckers.